wherever you're joining in from. Thank you so very much for joining in. My name is Elma Kontomenu, and I will be the moderator for today's session. I welcome you all again. Today's session is our second session out of 3 in our webinar series for consumer food safety education. The first session was done 2 weeks ago, so if you missed it, do not worry. We have a recording and we have some resources on our website. I will be sharing a link to our website in the chat during the course of the presentation, so you can just access and then get the recording. And today we have our exciting webinar today with very interesting speakers. Please, I'll kindly ask that you mute your microphone when you join. Please kindly mute your microphones. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Then we have the last session will be on the 27th of July on food safety implications of soaked nuts. I would also be sharing a link, so if you have not registered, I will kindly ask that you register so that you be a part of this exciting webinar series we are having. Thank you so very much again for joining in, and you are all welcome again. I can see our numbers are, doubling up, I hope. So I asked, where are we all joining from? Kindly type it in the chat. I would like to see where we are joining in from, so we know. Kindly type it in the chat. We have North Carolina, I see Oregon, California, Oregon, okay. Okay, California. Oh. Any other places? Okay, Kansas City. Oh, I can see we have a lot of Californians joining in. Thank you so very much. Okay, so before I introduce our speakers, a few things I would like for us to note. At the end of the presentation, I will be sharing a link. It will be a link to a survey. I would ask that you kindly click on that survey and then fill it for us. For those who are requiring CE credits, there'll be a link for you there as well to access your certificates. Another thing is the session will be recorded, and any other resource materials would also be given and it will be shared on our website. I will share a link to our website, as I mentioned earlier on, so that you can access it. I'll also be sharing our other social media platforms, so you can kindly follow us there for any other upcoming events and any other information you might have. And then lastly, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, a 10 to 15 Q&A session. So if you have any question during the presentation, I will kindly ask for you to type it in the chat. I will pick the question and I will convey the question to the speakers during Q&A session. Last but not the least, kindly please mute your microphones when you join. Kindly double check just to see if your microphone is off. Kindly check to see. We'll move straight into the presentation. Today we have 2 amazing people who are going to lead this webinar. The first session will be taken by Dr. Liu, Dr. Pei Liu. Dr. Liu joined the Hospitality Management Program as an assistant professor at University of Missouri in 2016. She has experiences teaching and undergraduate courses in food science, dietetics, and hospitality management. Dr. Liu has been engaged in a variety of applied research projects funded by USDA, ranging from consumer consumption behaviors, that is recognizing clients' needs and wants, evaluating current practices in commercial restaurants and assisted living facilities to promote nutrition and healthy eating habits, to food safety practices in ethnic restaurants and farms. She has more than 14 successful grant proposals. So far, Dr. Liu has more than 20 publications and presented her research projects in a number of national and state conferences. She received her master's degree in hospitality management from University of Houston and PhD degree in hospitality management and dietetics from Kansas State University. The second session will be taken by Dr. Julie Garden-Robinson. Dr. Garden-Robinson is a registered dietitian, with master's and a PhD degree in cereal chemistry and food technology. She is an extension food and nutrition specialist at North Dakota State University Extension. Dr. Robinson has developed numerous award-winning, grant-funded multidisciplinary nutrition and food safety educational programs for children and adults on a wide range of topics. Dr. Gardner Robinson has written a weekly food and nutrition column, Prairie Fare, since 1997, and a weekly blog since 2012. So we welcome our presenters. Dr. Liu, the floor is yours. You can start your presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for the introduction. Can everyone hear me well? Good.
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Can you see my PowerPoint? Okay. Right. So welcome. Thank you so much for attending my presentation today, and good afternoon. Because I'm from Missouri, so it's just past noon. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to share one of my research that's focusing on food safety knowledge and self-reported practices among campus in the United States. Just like I might just introduce the assistant professor from the hospitality program within the University of Missouri. So first, I would like to give you a little bit of introduction about the background of our study. So this study has been published in the Journal of Food Production Trend last year. So just a little bit background about foodborne outbreak. According to the definition by FDA in 2022, that is defined as two or more people becoming sick from one or the same contaminated food or beverage that is caused, it's defined as a foodborne outbreak. So according to the reports by CDC, out of 57,649 foodborne outbreaks that it reported from the year 2009 to 2022, about 370 cases that were associated with food served at a camp or a campsite. So that actually include about 11,577 cases, individual illnesses, and caused about 314 people hospitalized and 1 people died. So if you look at the number of cases, foodborne illnesses outbreaks occurred during the camping, that number actually increased significantly from year 2009, which was 22, to year 2019 to 32. So what is the definition of camping in the United States? So the term refers to a range of different activities and approaches to outdoor accommodations. And if you look at the number of activities, outdoor activities, so in 2021, there was about 57 million households claimed themselves like they went on at least a one-time camping trip. And that was a huge increase compared to 2022. That accounts for 18% increase. So that actually was not surprising because the COVID pandemic and people try to keep social distancing and they seek more outdoor activities. So that's why there's a huge increase for people going outside and they take more camping trip. I'm not sure whether you heard about this new term or new trend in the hospitality industry. It's called pod travel, P-O-D, pod travel, meaning people tend to travel within a small group of close friends or close family and to avoid crowded travelers to stay stick together because they feel it's more safe and to keep social distancing from other people group. So it's become a trend or trendy in the travel industry. However, because most people prefer to camp or going outside outdoor activities during summer season, the high temperatures contributes or increase the risk of foodborne disease. So if you look at the reports from USDA or CDC from year 2009 to 2020, there was 71% foodborne illness outbreaks occurred in June and July. So it's very critical to determine the current food safety knowledge and practices among campers in the United States. So now let's look at the food safety practices during camping. So the USDA actually provided some recommendations for our campers. So the campers need to ensure the available transportation as well as to prepare the necessary medications in case of any emergency causes due to foodborne illness. So the camper should plan for the medications or equipment will be using during the camping trip, such as they need to prepare clean water supplies like a bottle of water. And also, according to the CDC reports, the #1 cause of foodborne illness outbreaks among campers was cross-contamination. So practice personal hygiene is very critical during the camping trip. Also, food allergy should be prevented as well. And there is a gap between the food safety guidelines and the current food safety knowledge and practices among campers. So because the literature review and what we have to talk about, the reports and also the knowledge gaps, our study aimed to evaluate what is the current food safety knowledge and the practices among campers. So moving on to the methodology section of our study. The instrument was developed based on the literatures. So the survey was used to identify or to evaluate the food safety knowledge and practices among campers. 3 sections were included in our survey instrument. The first section was to evaluate the demographic background of the participants. And the second section included food safety knowledges, which had 34 questions, was adopted from the previous study. And the last section included 9 self-reported food safety practices questions measured by 5-point Likert scale.
We're talking about food safety and camping.
From 1 being always and never, and 5 being always, that was adopted from the previous literature. And the study was pilot tested with 30 participants that was not included in the final data collection. And then the Chroma Alpha was used to ensure the instrument reliability and validity. So for the survey development, and we used the SurveyMonkey as the instrument platform, and the data was collected using a survey company called Daneta, and that was formerly called Research Now. To be eligible to participate in the study, and we only include individuals who were 18 years of age or above, and who had camped within the previous year in the US. And then after data collection, and SPSS 25.0 were used to analyze data. Descriptive data analysis were used to summarize the data. Then Pearson correlation, t-test, and one-way ANOVA were used to analyze the relationships among variables. And then starting from the slides, I will show you the results of our study. So the table 1 shows you the characteristics of our participants. In total, we received 286 complete surveys. As you can tell, I will make this is highlight. The majority of our participants fell in the age range of 56 to 65 or 66 and above years of age. And most of the participants were female, accounts for 61%. And non-Hispanic Caucasian accounts for the most of the participants, about 87%. And if you look at the educational background, some college as well as the bachelor degree accounts for almost half of the participants, about 48%, 49%. And in terms of the food service experience, a majority of them had no food service experiences before, indicating they had no or minimal food service knowledge. In terms of the household income, and most or nearly half of them had a household income in the range of $30,000 to $70,000. And the majority of them had no food safety training experiences before. So they had not received any food safety training or knowledge training previously. In terms of the foodborne illness experiences, majority of them had never experienced that. About their camp sleep arrangement, 33.9% said they slept in the RV, and the rest of them said they slept in the tent. So moving on, when we test their food safety knowledge in 34 questions, we actually categorized grouped those 34 questions into 5 different categories. So starting from time, temperature, cross-contamination, go all the way to common pathogens and food sources. So this table gives you a summary about what are the correct responses in each category. So the top indicating the most correct responses were answered in that category. So time, temperature received the most correct responses. However, the common pathogens and the common food sources received the lowest correct responses by campers, by our participants. Okay. And then from the next slide, I will give you a few examples on what questions were asked in each category. So for the cross-contamination category, when we ask the rank 1, meaning that question received most correct answers from our participants for cross-contamination category. So when we ask to prevent foodborne illnesses, which of these individuals should not prepare food for other people, most people answered this question correctly. However, when we ask, when should cooking surfaces be washed, rinsed, and sanitized, and lots of people got that question incorrectly. For time and the temperature for cooking and storing food, and so when we ask them, when shopping for groceries, refrigerated foods should be placed in the cart, and most people answered that question correctly. But when we ask them, what is the safest method for cooling a large pot or hot soup, and not many people answered that one correctly. So in the category of increased risk of a foodborne disease, eating which of this food will increase a person's risk of foodborne illnesses, and many people received credits for that question. However, which food is least likely to cause foodborne illnesses? And most people got that question wrong. Okay. So next, which group at the greatest risk for foodborne disease? Okay. So the first question, compared to most people, which of these individuals are more likely to get sick or seriously ill from harmful germs in food? And most people received credits. However, when I ask, okay, people should be especially careful about not eating raw food if they have. So that is question most people answered incorrectly. Okay. So lastly, Salmonella bacteria cause foodborne disease. Illnesses are commonly found in chicken, turkey, or eggs. How can these food items be made safe? And that one, most people answer this one correctly. But Listeria bacteria are most likely associated with deli meats, and that one received the lowest score. So I have more questions or details that included in the paper, and I'm more than happy to give you more details after the presentation is over. All right. So moving on, this table shows you the t-test results for food safety knowledge for gender and previous training. By looking at the results, you can tell the overall knowledge score, female received a significantly higher overall knowledge score than male participants. And if you look at the breakdown categories for food safety knowledge, only groups at the risk categories that female have the higher knowledge score than male participants. Then you look at the people who received the training versus who have never received the food safety training, and who received the training have a much higher overall knowledge than who have never received the food safety training. That indicating training is a significant factor contributing to food safety knowledge. All right, so moving on to participants' age, ethnicity, and educational level and their food safety knowledge. So looking at their age, so there's no really significant differences crossed by their age group. However, if you look at their mean score, their mean knowledge score by their age group, there you can tell their overall knowledge score, and in the age group of 26 to 35 has the highest on the overall knowledge. But when you compare the time and the temperature categories knowledge score, and they only these two groups has a significant difference, indicating people or campers within the groups in age 46 to 55 has a significant higher knowledge score in time and temperature than the youngest group, which is 18 to 25. So that makes sense, because like people who are in the 46 to 55 who are the main cook in the family. So when they practice more, they have a better sense on how much time or what's the temperature that the meal should be cooked, compared to the youngest kid or the youngest people in the family who had the least or less cooking experience. Look at the ethnicity background versus their overall knowledge score. And non-Hispanic Caucasian has the highest knowledge score compared to other ethnic groups. However, I also want to point out is we have the most or the majority non-Hispanic Caucasian participants than any other ethnic group participants. So actually that is also one of the limitations in our study. And I hope in the future that we can include more participants from other groups to have a further analysis and to give more meaningful results. And the same as the time and temperatures, cross contaminations, they all indicated, they all indicated that the non-Hispanic Caucasian have a better knowledge score in these groups. About educational level, seems like the higher or the better educational level and the better the higher overall knowledge score. Okay, so moving on to look at the correlations between food safety knowledge and self-reported practices. So there is a positive and not strong, but significant correlation between the knowledge score and the practices, that indicating the higher, the better knowledge and the better practices. And also the other way around, the more practices that in food safety, and also that can help you to enhance the food safety knowledge. All right, so in summary, so what does those results tell us? Our campers actually they are lack of food safety knowledge in the following categories: the groups at risk, common food pathogens, personal hygiene practices, as well as the foodborne pathogens. So in the future, our focus in food safety training for campers should focusing on those areas. And also, women tends to have a better knowledge than men campers. Caucasian identified better food safety knowledge than any other ethnic groups. And so in the future, we need to have a focus or develop a better training program for ethnic campers. And a higher educational level seems to be more knowledgeable for food safety practices, as well as the food safety knowledge. And food safety knowledge and the practices, they are correlated and positively correlated. So a hands-on teaching components could help campers to reinforce food safety handling practices. So what are some recommendations and takeaway practices, right, from our study? So food safety training that should be required for campers prior to camping. That could actually reduce the incidence for foodborne illnesses when camping. And then the next, we need to think about a way to develop the flyers or e-brochures in multiple languages targeting different people from very educational or diverse educational backgrounds, that to promote our food safety training and also to increase their attendance for food safety training program. And also we need to tailor the food safety training materials for different populations. For example, the younger population or the younger generation may prefer to learn food safety training information from a different platform than the older generation. So we can post the food safety training information on a different platform, such as their social media, like using YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter to increase their interest. The older generation may still prefer to read written materials. So maybe the printouts, the brochure is still a good way for them to learn those training information. For the ethnic groups, some of them cannot read English well. So the training materials should include more pictures, less words, that to overcome the language barriers. And the camping staff should be thoroughly trained as well, just in case anything happened at campsite, and they can provide help. Also, if anything needed, and they also can give recommendations as soon as possible. A campsite can also provide brochures or any print out the material that can provide cooking instructions or any information may needed for the camping activities. So maybe a brochure contains those specific information can be provided at the national park entrance. And so when they get into the park, they can get a free brochure to read on. And then lastly, ongoing and hands-on training or education is needed. So when you don't use it and you lose it. So I think that's that the takeaway messages from our study. So those are some selective references that we use in the research. And finally, this is the article that we talk about in the study, and you are more than welcome to read more information from it. And this is my email address, and if you want to receive a copy, and please send me an email. I'm more than happy to email you one. And thank you very much for listening. And I'm more than happy to answer any question you may have towards the end of the section. And I think that is my time, and I will pass it on to our second speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could you unshare and then I will share? Let's see here. All right, give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. All right, very good. Well, as I was introduced, I am Julie Garden Robinson, and I may be the only person that you've ever met from Fargo, North Dakota. So hello, it's sunny and beautiful in Fargo, and it's going to be 90 degrees for several days. So you hear about us a lot because of our snow, but we also have heat. So today, my section is going to be a little bit taking off on what you just talked about, but why summer food safety? Why did we ever come up with a webinar series on this? I'm going to talk a little bit about some new foods for outdoor eating, provide you with some resources and recommendations based on the Food Safety and Inspection Service recommendations. So if you were listening closely, you will know the answer. So in the chat, I'd like you to let me know if you think that camping increased or decreased during the pandemic. You got it. Well, certainly we were all looking for something to do where we could maintain that social distance and also have fun. Very good. Everyone got that one right. It increased a lot. And here's the question that our previous speaker already told us the answer. How many households do you think camped in 2021 according to Campgrounds of America? $1,000, 10,000, 10 million? Well, Brent is pretty close there. 51 million households went camping according to KOA, and that included 10 million brand new campers. And in full disclosure, I am not a camper, but I am a food safety person, so I will be sharing with you recommendations. Some other things, what's going on in July? Well, certainly there's a lot of outdoor eating going on. July is National Picnic Month, where we take our food outside and on the road. And as a little bit of background, that was founded back in 1952 by the American Bakers Association. And thanks, Ellie, lots of people don't stay on KOA campgrounds. There's a lot of other places, so the number is probably much higher than that. By the way, picnic is from a French word, and it dates back to French dining in the mid-18th century, where they mainly had wine, cheese, and bread as their menu. So it is National Picnic Month. It's also National Hot Dog Month, by the way. So again, why are we focusing on summer food safety? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Certainly it's warmer, and the risk for foodborne illness increases due to warmer temperatures when we take our food outside, and we have less opportunity to keep food cold unless we take some special measures. You've probably all heard of Fat Tom. That's the acronym for what bacteria need to grow and multiply every 15, 20 minutes. They'll double in number in the right conditions. Stands for food, acidity, temperature, time, oxygen, and moisture. So we have foods, we have moisture, we have temperature and time. So we have a lot of conditions for bacteria to multiply rapidly. And often people take off during the summer months. They go on the road and they do move dining outdoors, whether that's in their own backyard or in any park anywhere in the country. And many of you are from beautiful areas with mountains and lots of fun places to visit. This is a handout that we have available. If you just search NDSU extension food, then you go to food safety and home food safety, you will find a lot of pieces that if you're interested, anyone can print our materials and use them. So we have one called Keep Food Safe When Camping and Hiking, and it looks just like that. And we have a second one called Keep Food Safe During Summer Picnics. So these have some of the basic rules and certainly would be good talking points for any of you who are involved in extension outreach. Maybe you go on the radio. It's very good to get all of this information out to the public because as you could see from our last speaker's research, I've been doing this food safety outreach for many years, but there still are a lot of people who've never heard of some of the things that I'll be sharing with you. So I think many of you will know these, but I thought it would be good to just review some of these safety rules. So these are some of the pieces that I will be covering in a little bit greater depth. And one of those is planning. It's really important to plan anytime that you are going on a trip, of course, or you're going on a picnic. There's a lot of things that you can do in advance to make sure that no one is going to become ill because of food handling or cross-contamination. Keeping foods clean and keeping foods cold, keeping hot foods hot, and considering alternative foods. So in the chat, type yes or no. Have you ever heard of glamping? Is that a familiar word? Glamping. You can probably guess what it stands for. It's become more widely known in the whole vernacular. It's just a combination of glamorous and camping. And it's a style of camping, as you might know, with a lot of amenities. In some cases, they have resort style services and spas, and it's not your typical put up a tent and try to find a source of clean water. So lots of resort style services are available. Sounds good to me. But regardless of your camping style, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to plan ahead. Plan your meals. Think about how much food are you going to need based on your household size or your camping friend size in terms of how many meals you're going to have. Try to use common ingredients so you're not having to carry so many things ahead of time. Find out if campfires are allowed. Sometimes they're not. I know there are many of you in areas of the country where fires are a major risk right now with dry environments. Should you only bring non-refrigerated food, or do you have the options to have refrigerated food? And then pack plastic bags. It'd be better if they were recyclable plastic bags and also airtight containers. So there's many things that you can do to plan ahead. So these are some easy food for quick outdoor trips. I'd get a little tired myself of eating these things for extended times, but these are all safe. Nuts, of course, and in our next talk, we're going to hear more about nuts in a couple of weeks. Whole fruit, is safe. As soon as you cut fruit, it becomes a perishable commodity, and then we need to follow all the food safety handling guidance. Trail mix, granola, of course, dried fruit, peanut butter sandwiches, or other kinds of nut butter, because that's a potential allergen, meat jerkies, if you're so inclined, and bottled water. So those are some quick options if you were going to head out on the trail and you didn't want to have to bring coolers and all that sort of thing. So as I was preparing for this talk, I went online and I looked at the different options, and we have a very large outdoor camping store in Fargo. They sell these products as well, but I just went online. And what they're finding is that there's going to be tremendous growth through 2028 in backpacking and camping foods, because people love to go out and explore the beauty of nature. And they're not your typical campfire and backpack meals. And some of you may have enjoyed some of these already. So I call them fancy foods. They're not really called fancy foods. But there are numerous dehydrated and freeze-dried meals. In fact, all you have to do is add boiling water. So these were just a few of the options that I easily found. Mexican quinoa, Thai curry, mango sticky rice, mushroom risotto, Cuban black beans, chicken and dumplings if you want a down-home style meal, buffalo chicken mac and cheese. And the prices were variable. So the packet, I just grabbed this off the internet. That's for about a 4-ounce, 2-serving meal. And these vary anywhere from, less than 50 cents up to $1.37 plus per ounce. So just a lot of things available. Some people have also invested in their own freeze dryers. There are consumer level freeze dryers. They are on the more expensive side, but if you wanted to create your own meals, that's certainly something that some people are doing. So as we get back into some of the practical points, we want to keep it clean. So another word for safe water is potable water. Is it available? You may need to bring your own water. Of anything, we can live without food for a while, but not without water. So certainly bottled water would be an option. If there's no way of carrying cleaning type water, you could certainly use moist towelettes. All of the sources do recommend biodegradable camping soaps, because you don't want to get these chemicals into the water supply or other environment. So those would be some things to think about. And someone just popped in, there are tablets to make water safe as well. Some more about water. Even though you might see it in movies, and especially old Westerns and that kind of thing, where they drink water out of a clear stream or a lake, we don't recommend that, because of course bacteria can't be seen, parasites can't be seen. So even if the water looks crystal clear, it's still not okay to consume. And it can carry a wide range of organisms. So we do want to be sure that the water that we are consuming, or even washing our hands with, or using in any way, should be safe. So if you have your own bottled or tap water, the recommendation from USDA and many others is to boil it. So boil it at least 1 minute. So certainly take that into account. And as somebody mentioned, there are some other chemical sanitizers or ways to make your water safe, but USDA pretty much said try to boil it for 1 minute, or bring your own water. One thing that we always want to do, regardless of where we are, and we certainly have heard this a lot in the last 2.5 years, and that is to wash our hands often, anytime we may contaminate them. Cross-contamination is an ongoing risk. So a piece that people do incorrectly very often is that they'll start by putting the soap on their hands, and then they'll wet their hands. And technically, we all should be wetting our hands and then lathering. The recommendation is at least 20 seconds of scrubbing, rinsing, and drying. And you've heard that endlessly, but I think it's really important to remind, if you're in the business of educating people, just that hand washing is so important. Typically, when I'm talking to people who are going camping, sometimes this water isn't easily available. So in that case, hand sanitizers can be used, but we do want them to have enough alcohol that will inactivate the organisms that might be present. So you all know this. If you bring your pets along, that's another time when we should be washing our hands. And anytime you do something that could contaminate your hands is an important time to do this. Cleaning, more about that. Washing your hands and your cleaning surfaces. As Dr. Pei said, cross-contamination continues to be an issue, and people just aren't aware of how easy it is to do that. Particularly with grilling and cooking food outdoors, one of the common ways that people contaminate is to use the same dish or pan that held the raw meat to hold the cooked meat. The classic example. Or using cutting boards that were used for one thing and then later something else. So, you know, an option would be recyclable containers, disposables that you could use. There certainly are a lot more options than there used to be. So we have many perishable foods that we might like to bring along on trips, whether it's a picnic or, you know, a camping expedition. All of these, as you know, are high in protein, they're high in moisture, and they can grow a variety of organisms. So anytime, as I mentioned earlier, that you peel or cut fruits and vegetables, then they become perishable, whereas the whole ones will maintain their quality and safety until you trim them and cut them, but their quality may decrease and they could spoil. But certainly think about all your perishable foods and how long they can be at warm temperatures. So packing your cooler is an important thing. Best practice would be to have your raw meat and poultry in a separate cooler, or at least at the bottom, double wrapped and protected. I mean, that came from USDA FSIS, but ideally 2 separate containers. And don't put your raw meat in with your cans of pop or whatever your beverage of choice is, because you could contaminate that as well. So in the chat, which do you think is better, ice blocks or ice cubes? And Brent is correct. The blocks will stay frozen longer than the cubes. They're a little bit harder. I mean, you'd have to freeze them yourself most likely, or use you know, something else to make your blocks, but ice cubes will melt quickly. And as I mentioned, you also want to keep your beverages separate from your raw meat. When you're transporting your cooler, and I know we have different vehicles than probably at the time when USDA came up with the recommendation. Most of us are driving SUVs or something like that. But we do want people to transport inside the passenger compartment of the vehicle instead of the trunk, because the trunk will get hot. And also keep those coolers in the shade. You could even cover them with a blanket or a tarp. And if the ice thaws and it's been longer than the recommended time, unfortunately, you need to discard the food. And also think about discarding the food in a way that other people or animals aren't going to come along and eat food that isn't safe. Temperature, important. My kids always think that I travel with a thermometer in my purse. I really don't, but it wouldn't be a bad idea. So use a food thermometer. Our temperatures are listed on this, and many of you I know are teachers of this content, but the USDA recommendation is 140 or higher. If you're working in a restaurant under FDA guidance, they use 135 or higher. The reheating temperature is 165. Just some basic rules that we included on our fact sheet, food thermometer basics, and insert in the thickest part. Make sure that you think about that thermometer as a piece of equipment. You need to wash with soapy water, sanitize, and also calibrate regularly, especially if you happen to drop it on the ground. So there are your temperatures, just as a reminder. I'm not going to go through these, but it is interesting, and I find that a lot of people are not aware of temperatures. We give away a lot of magnets just to remind people. But why can roasts and chops be cooked to a lower temperature than ground beef? Well, of course, the contamination would typically be on the outside of a roast or a steak, whereas when you grind it up, everything is throughout. What was added the most recently, well, several years now, but for these larger cuts, they do recommend a 3-minute rest time. So once you've cooked it, and you take it off, because the temperature will continue to rise for several minutes after you take it off the grill. So again, 165 for all kinds of poultry. And we have some time rules. So 2 hours until this weekend. As I said, it's going to be 90. In that case, if I was eating outside, it's the 1 hour rule. So discard food if the temperature outside is 90 degrees or higher more than an hour. So if I put food on a picnic table and it sat there without temperature control, unfortunately, we only have an hour according to our recommendations. So there's also non-perishable alternatives. We can try our fruit and our cookies and our baked potato chips. I am a dietitian. These aren't the most healthy except for the fruit, but good things to think about. As I wrap up almost, what about wild animals? So these were some of the recommendations that came from camping type programs. So you want to research your campsite. We don't have a lot of bears. I'm walking around Fargo, North Dakota, but there are some in my neighboring Minnesota, I know. You want to camp away from a cover for bears. Keep a clean camp. Bears are hungry. They're looking for food. Keep the food in bear-resistant containers, and don't keep food close to where you will sleep. And set up away from trails where animals might be walking, and try to cook away from your tent. So things to think about. There's more than bears that can be out and about, and wolves and who knows what, but they are seeking food. So you just want to, some people actually hang it high in a tree. Another pest that can be a problem are bugs. So some tips for that: cover your serving line. Bugs can spread copious amounts of bacteria and other organisms. And you can also think about different repellent options. You never want to spray your insecticides if you use them close to food, because that could be a chemical hazard for you or your family. There are some other types of options. Some people think herbs work, or vinegar, or so on. And one thing to think about as the temperature's warm and you don't like bugs to be around you, and I will tell you, we have an enormous amount of mosquitoes that inhabit my area of the world. Stay hydrated. Being dehydrated actually attracts bugs. And even if it's hot, it's better to wear long sleeves if you're trying to stay away from bugs. And this was news to me. I was not aware that blue or black clothing attract bugs more than green. So I guess you blend right in with the trees if you're wearing green. You certainly could also try screen rooms, netting. Some other tips: if bugs are an issue where you live, avoid fragrant moisturizers. If it smells like a flower, they'll think you're a flower and they'll come for you to dine on you. And Campgrounds of America has a lot more information. So again, in closing, we have a few minutes left for questions. Be sure to plan ahead, keep it clean, keep cold foods cold, keep hot foods hot, and consider these alternatives. These are some of our resources. I certainly invite you to go to your local extension office, whether it's county-based or state-based. They have similar food safety information, I'm sure. If you go to our site, I do 3 monthly newsletters. You can sign up, they're free. And every February through April, we also do field to fork webinars from a variety of our experts on campus here at North Dakota State and our partners across the North Central region. So there's my direct email, and that's my direct phone number to my office. So certainly if you have questions, comments, feel free to reach out to me. And I'm going to turn it back to Elma, our leader.
Thank you, Dr. Cardin Robinson. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Liu, as well. Please, I'm posting a link to a survey. Please kindly fill. If you want CE credits, you can also get access to this link. Please, so question time, we have about 5 minutes. 5 minutes for questions. So you can type it in the chat and then I will convey it to our speakers. Kindly fill the post survey. I've put the link up. Dr. Lee, there's a question we'd like to ask. How did you gather your participants for the survey?
Okay, can you repeat the question? How did I reach out to the participants?
How did you gather the participants for the survey? Yes.
Yeah, because we use a survey company for the data collection, and we just reached out to the company, and they had a pool that they can reach out to the participants. So we did not have a direct contact with all the participants. So we paid the company, and then they gave out the compensation to the participant. Actually, that is one of the limitations for this data collection, because we did not have a opportunity to reach out to the larger pool. That's why you can look at our participant demographic information. We have the majority of our participants were non-Hispanic Caucasian, and then so we were not able to reach to other Hispanic, not Hispanic, ethnic groups. I think in the future, if we can collect data on site or face to face, then maybe we were able to collect more data from the other groups and to do a more comparison to have a better result. But thank you for the question.
You're welcome. Yeah, because there was also a follow-up that there were really no Black campus, which was in lieu with that question. So
right. And also it's hard for those people who are not speaking English. And then or if people who do not have internet access and they cannot participate in the study.
Okay, thank you. And another question says, do companies that sell their camping supplies provide any food safety educational materials for companies?
Then I am not sure. Maybe they do not. But I think that is a good recommendation. I think maybe we can try to like in the future, and maybe we can give when we develop the training materials, that we can put it on the site when they sell those equipment, and we can give out the brochure like within the boxes, and then that's a good way to educate those campers, and they can read it and then they can know how to use it. They can practice food safety practices when camping. I think that's a good recommendation.
Great. Okay. Dr. Gardner Roberts, someone is asking about using liquid eggs in a cat.
In a carton? Well, liquid eggs would certainly be an option, but they are perishable. There are dried eggs that are available. It's not as tasty as the liquid ones, perhaps, but you would just have to keep those liquid eggs cold, or some of them can be frozen. So you could start with a frozen egg mixture and keep it in a cooler, but perishable, high protein, high moisture, but a good option if you can handle it. And if you can't, definitely dried eggs would be another option. And I had another question I started answering in the chat from somebody here, Brent, was it? about why should we wet our hands first, and that's basically so the soap can form its lather and it's not going to just like stick to your hands basically. So wetting them allows you to solubilize that soap and the soap can do its job better. But a lot of people do not do that. I see it. I mean, if I'm in a bathroom publicly, I just kind of look around like, okay, there we go. No, I can't educate someone in a bathroom. That is not a good thing to do, Julie. So I don't.
Okay, thank you. Our time is up. I've shared a link to our website and to our social media platforms. You can follow us. I'll be posting the recording and other resources on these platforms. Thank you, Dr. Gabby Robinson. Thank you, Dr. Liu. And I want to thank everyone here for joining us. I will also send an email to everyone. So if you miss a recording, you just have the link in there. Thank you all so much for joining today's session. We'll be expecting to see you at the next one on July 27th. Have a good day. Bye. Thank you.